Hello everybody. So in today's video, I want to do a quick back of the napkin math as to what is the return on investment of an Enphase system. And of course, it's a complicated question to answer. I always recommend getting free estimates. It depends on your utility rates in your area. It depends on how much sun you get. It's really complicated to have a blanket answer for everybody in the US as to how much money you can expect to make from your Enphase system, or to save, rather, in the form of electricity. But I'm not going to nonetheless try. So let me get started with this. First of all, I'm gonna start with a 10 kilowatt hour system, which is typically what you would recommend for a medium size home. 10 or 12 kilowatt hours is typically what most people would get to cover most of the house's needs, right? And what I'm using here is I'm using the estimates from a do-it-yourselfer on YouTube. You can look him up. It's actually one of the most interesting videos about installing yourself Enphase, because Enphase is one of the few solar systems that allow you to install it yourself. If you take their training, you can actually install it yourself. Anyways, so that's how much it cost him to install 10 kilowatt hour. It cost him $11,521 to install 10 kilowatt hour on his own. Now, of course, I'm going to assume that most of us are not that handy and we don't do it on our own. And so we have a solar pro do all of the permits, the wiring, the installation, everything for us. And I'm going to assume, and this is a fair assumption based on my own estimates that I've done on my house, and other estimates that I've seen circulating on Twitter. I'm going to assume that using a pro increases the cost by 100%. Using a pro is going to double the cost of materials. And then I'm also going to assume, and this is, well, again, documented based on the data that I have, that adding batteries that are consistent with your system ups the total cost of the install by 50%. So what I'm getting is, for a 10 kilowatt hour system with all of the bells and whistles, including the battery, not a car charger. I'm not assuming a car charger, but including a stack of batteries, 10 kilowatt hour worth of solar panels, the inverters, the wiring, the racks, everything, the permits, everything's installed. What I'm going to assume is that it costs you $28,800 for a 10 kilowatt hour system. And when I do the estimates, I'm like right there. Because when I do an estimate for my house, I'm getting $29,000 for a 12 kilowatt hour system in my area. So I believe I'm really good on this one. $28,800 with the batteries for 10 kilowatt hour. And that's what I'm going to say it costs in the whole United States right now. Anywhere in the US, roughly the price, what I'm going to say. Now, how much electricity are you going to produce with a 10 kilowatt hour system? Well, again, this is tricky to figure out. But per my different searches and using different estimators, I estimate that 1 kilowatt hour of solar panels, regularly installed, right, kind of your standard install, is going to produce 900 kilowatt hours per year. And so if we know that 1 kilowatt hour on average in the US, and of course it's tough to come up with an average in the US because there's no average in the US, right? It's a very big country. So some places get more sun or not. But assuming the most average spot, assuming, I don't know, the house in Kansas, right out of the center, we're assuming 900 kilowatt hour per year. So now we have all of the data we need. 10 kilowatt hours of solar panels installed. You don't do anything. They do everything for you with the batteries for self-consumption, because we're assuming you're going to do self-consumption here. The cost is about $28,800. It's going to produce for you 9,000 kilowatt hours of electricity. Now, the average cost of electricity in the USA right now is 17 cents. And I get this data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Within June 2023, 17 cents is what the whole USA pay. Keep in mind, in some places it's more expensive. And actually, in Europe, it's getting more expensive. Also worth noting that the average increase that I'm using is 10% per year that I'm going to use later in the analysis. But so let's assume 17 cents. 17 cents a kilowatt hour is what you're saving, and you're producing 9,000 of those. And so you do 9,000 times 17 cents. Your yearly benefit, your yearly tax-free production of electricity, because you're not paying any taxes on this, which is important, right? Making electricity is superior to getting a dividend check, right? You may say, "Oh, I want to invest in stocks, get a dividend check." If you get a dividend check, you're going to get taxed. Making electricity, producing your electricity, you're not taxed on that. It's just electricity. You're not making money. You're making electricity. So that's actually wonderful when you think about it. But if the yearly benefit is $1,530 on a system that has cost you $28,000. But the $28,000, of course, you have to deduce the tax credit. So the 30% tax credit needs gone, right? And so actually the cost of a system is $20,160. That's your cost of a system, assuming that you pay taxes, of course. But assuming that you pay taxes, you're going to get your $8,000 off of that system. And so the real cost to you is $20,000, and you make $1,500 a year. So the instant break-even period, if you just take a snapshot of this calculation, it appears to be 13 years, almost 13 years actually. So 13 years at first glance, that's actually pretty good when you really think about it. That's actually pretty good. But it's not as good as what it could be, and there's a big but here. This is actually a shorter break-even period because we have to take into account, that's what I just showed you, the increases in utility rates. So the official data shows that in the U.S. utility, if you take the old USA, utility rates have increased 6.25% in 1 year, according to the BLS. But that's for the whole United States. And I want to point out that if you live in areas like the Northeast or the Pacific, you've seen a much bigger increase than that. You've seen a much higher increase in the 10+%. Now, I also want to point out that if you live in the EU, although this is a US-centric analysis here, but if you live in the EU, increases maybe even higher. So, for example, last month when I was in France, this was the talk in the country. Everybody was talking about the planned increases for electric rates in France. And you see they were planning 10% on August 1st, then 17%, 17%, and 17% every 6 months. So over there, you're above 30% per year in inflation in electric rates, right? So it really depends where you live. That's why when I say 10% plus increases in the US, that may be conservative. That may be a conservative way to look at it. So I'm going to assume now that electric prices are going to increase 10% each year in the United States, across the United States. Then in that case, your savings increase every year, right? The amount of money you make every year increases as the electric rates increase, right? As you would have paid that electricity much more down the line. And actually, if you take into account the increases in electric rates over a 10-year period, you end up breaking even in year 9 on the most average price, the most average system, in the most average spot that I can find in the US. You end up breaking even in year 9. And this is roughly what Badri, the Enphase CEO, what Badri said on the call. This is roughly what he said. On the earnings call, he said, a solar system, what the customer pays to the installer with the battery, the whole system, you get about a 9-year payback, is what Badri said on the call, and that is what I get to calculate right here. So now you're getting into a return on investment that's well above 10%. So that begins to be very, very good. Again, keeping in mind that you don't pay taxes on electricity, right? You don't pay taxes on the electricity that you make. So it's also a very important point. But then we get into specific situations, right? So what if you live in the Northeast? What if you live in the Pacific, right? What if you live in California? Well, if you live in the Northeast or in California and you have these rates right now, remember I took 17 cents. If now you're paying in the 22 cents, which, by the way, in some spots it's way higher than that. Like there's quite a few spots in the US where you pay 35 cents a kilowatt hour. But if you're in the Northeast, or if you're in the Pacific, which, by the way, the US being the US, there's a lot of people living in the Northeast in the US, then your return is under 7 years now. Now your return on investment is under 7 years, so that's getting even more compelling. And as time goes by, right? Because remember, the tax credit is in place until 2033. The increases, in my view, they're going to keep going until 2033. But as time goes by, we also get improvements, right? The solar panels are getting better, right? Solar panels are getting better every year. Every year, the ability of your solar panel to produce electricity, or said otherwise, the cost per watt, right? That's another way you can calculate it. Is just declining. So solar panels are getting well over 10% better year after year. And the same is true for batteries. And remember, I estimated batteries was 50% of the cost of a system. The cost of batteries is declining rapidly at down 13%. For some years, it declines even by 20%. So the cost of the batteries is declining. The cost of solar, or said otherwise, the capacity of solar is increasing, the ability to produce. So year after year, the ROI is going to catch up. That ROI is going to catch up, right? That ROI is not going to stay 7 to 9 years. 2 years from now, that ROI might be back in the 4 to 5 years, like it used to be under NEM-free and under reselling the whole electricity, the entire electricity you produce, reselling it to the grid, right, and having a feed-in tariff. That's when we were getting 4 to 5 years payback. I believe with the technology that we're getting and with the increases in rates, we're going to get back there, right? And again, this is a bet. This is a bet on the electric rates. If you think the electric rates are going to go down, then maybe you don't want to get solar, because your return would be lower over the long run. But if you think electric rates are going to go up, which is absolutely what I do, then your return can be much higher. So right? If what's some fear, right? What if electric rates rise more than 10% per annum as some fear? This is something I saw on Twitter the other day. Deloitte, right, big consulting firm, estimates that U.S. utilities are going to have to spend $1.8 trillion by 2030 just to revamp the system and the grid. Who's going to pay for that, right? Who pays for that? It's us with our electric bills, right? So if you eliminate your electric bill, you are not going to be paying for this, and it's a vicious effect where fewer and fewer people are paying their bills, and so the costs are spread among fewer and fewer people, and you get into a situation where what if electric rates, right? What if electric rates grow more than 10% each year, because we have to finance all of these investments? And what if batteries and solar panels, I told you 10% better each year, but what if they get much better than 10% each year, right? What if we keep seeing step change improvements in these technologies? And sure enough, if you look at a solar system from 10 years ago compared to the solar system of today, you see a major change. So I think there will be a crazy shift towards solar, and making your own electricity in your single family house, in my view, will be as common as making your own ice in your fridge. That's kind of the way I look at it. And there will be a scissors effect against utilities. Utilities are going to be hit by kind of this double whammy of both their costs being so high, and thus the product, electricity that they sell, being less and less compelling. And on the other hand, solar getting better and better and better year after year. So I hope this math helps understand the ROI, keeping in mind that I really took not a discount price, right? $29,000 to make this estimate. That's not a discount price for a system. And even at $29,000, using all average data, you get to amazing numbers. So anyways, I hope this helped. This was not investment advice. This is just entertainment. Appreciate your likes, appreciate your subscribes. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful day.